I would now like to request Ms. Sarayu Kamath to share an overview of Raha Foundation. Ms. Sarayu Kamath is the head of Climate Change Initiative in Raha Foundation. She is an alumnus of VJTI and IIT Institute. Furthermore, she has pursued a diploma in Indian aesthetics ecological restoration of barren habitats using rewilding techniques. Previously, she was a senior executive in banking visual artist, whereas now she works with tribal communities and aims at increasing biodiversity and healing the earth. I request you, ma'am.
Yeah, good morning to you all, and a very, very warm wishes on the occasion of World Environment Day. Thank you so much, Vidhi, for that kind introduction. We at Raha truly proud and delighted to be on this platform. There is no planet B with SVT College. SVT College has truly made commendable strides in the field of education. And this is their silver jubilee year. And listening to their offerings to their students and to Dr. Jagmeet Madan, who is truly a visionary, I'm so happy that our young women have a lot of avenues that they can take up once they are graduated from SVT College. Another aspect that truly warmed my heart was, where Dr. Madan spoke of how the students are being nurtured and exposed to the environment. And also where, you're conducting energy audits to make sustainability a value that everybody inculcates. So that's truly great to hear. So I shall introduce you to Raha, some of the activities that we do, and our ambitious plans that we have to make the earth to make it truly green. And climate change is for real, and all of us need to involve ourselves into greening the environment, making our life sustainable, so that global warming doesn't become a reality. Scientists have predicted that in less than 30 years, the temperatures world over is going to rise by more than 2 degrees centigrade. And what that means is that many of our crops may not survive these high temperatures. There will be increased evaporation of water. So that means we're going to have less food on the table, less water, and even drinking water among all of us. So the time is now to take the action, right? So I'll present you briefly what we do at Raha and our steps that we are taking to build a much more ecologically stable and balanced environment. Yeah, I'll share my screen now. Can you see the screen? Celebrating 10 years?
Yes, ma'am.
So at Raha, we are celebrating 10 years of being in the social sector. It was started by 3 very passionate individuals. We have Girish Kulkarni, who is an alumnus of IIT and IIM. He has his own financial advisory, but he devotes more than 25% of his time to Raha Foundation. And he helps out in taking major decisions. And he's got a great focus on what it takes to alleviate people from poverty. Dr. Sarika is a PhD in management, and she is the main director and the leading force behind what Raha is today. And she's a great executioner, a great team leader. She's a wonderful speaker and truly sought out by many organizations. She's an author as well. We have G.R. Tengri, who actually sowed the seeds of what we should be doing at Raha. And he's always guiding us with his advice. So our vision is to make a better world for the less fortunate and the underprivileged tribal communities. So far, we have been focusing all our energies in the district of Palghar, which is 140 kilometers from Bombay, specifically in the talukas of Zawar and Mokhada. It's incredible. We have the financial capital, Bombay, which is just so close to Zawar and Mokhada. And yet, when we visit them, we meet with some of the poorest tribal communities. It's really very sad. So what happens there is that because of its geographic location and because of severely degraded forests, okay, the people in Palghar have to walk 4 and 5 hours for drinking water. This despite receiving 3000 mm of rainfall every year. So come December, Jan, the people have very little options other than walking long distance for water, and the entire consciousness is around water. And many of them then migrate to the cities looking for jobs, and we find many of them just breaking stones by the roadside. So this affected us very deeply, and we have committed ourselves to uplifting them. We've undertaken several projects, and these I would call the pillars of what we do. So what we realize is that if we don't do anything about their water and we don't give them a solution that is practical, we will not be able to progress on any other field. So we build check dams with them, we build rechargeable wells, and I'm truly proud to say that today there are 30,000 tribal people who have year-round supply of water. So, and they are not migrating. So that is our next measure of success. Now, what to do with their time, which was anyway, spent on walking for water. So we encouraging them to grow vegetables and fruits. So we're giving them very high quality seeds and saplings, giving them the technical know-how. So, tribals as a population are forest living, okay? They do not have too much experience of agriculture. So we are advising them. We've got many agriculture experts who are talking to them on a daily basis on various aspects of farming. We have Project Purja, which we are offering to the women in Zawar and Mokhada. So they are small micro entrepreneur activities. So she might open a small kirana store or have a small sewing machine and, tailor things. And with this, we are able to, kind of ensure a steady income to the women as well. We have Project Saukhya, which is for health. So what we're doing is we realize that the children are extremely malnourished. So we are providing nourishing foods to the children in their schools. So with better nourishment, they will be healthier. We have Project Adikala, which is revival of tribal art. So this is typically Warli art, and we are encouraging the tribal people, all the artisans, to paint on dupattas, on saris, on watches, on clocks, on trays, and we provide market linkages to them. And with this, we are able to provide a good source of income to the artisans and also uphold our culture of Wali art. Project Adhikata is related to tribal tourism, where we organize students, professionals, and people from academia who actually want to come and study the tribals. And once you have actually visited the tribals, we will truly get an experience of, what their conditions are like, and we will be compelled to work for them. So this is another way in which we want to expose, the issues that our tribals are facing. We have Project Vidya, where we are focusing on school infrastructure. We haven't got into actual teaching yet, but we'll probably do that eventually. We find that many of the schools are slightly dilapidated, and we are focusing on reinforcing their school infrastructure. Project Srishti is close to my heart, and I head climate initiatives, climate change initiatives at Raha. So I'll be talking a lot about that. So to give you an impact of what we've achieved in the past 10 years, we have made 45 villages water positive. We have ensured 30,000 people have year-round supply of water. This is water for their farms. This is water for drinking. We have saved 6,500 hours annually of women walking for water, and which they are now using for economic activity. 300 women are now micro entrepreneurs with us, and we're changing the course of their lives. 1,200 farmers are now taking up farming, and with this, they are able to lead a life of dignity in their own villages, and they're not migrating. 5,000 children have benefited from a nutrition program, and over 1 lakh trees have been planted over around 400-500 acres of land. And this is a little bit so far for the environment. 25 tribal artisans are now earning a good income. So this is what we have done so far, and what we are doing ahead for Mother Earth and for our environment and for future generations. If you look at this graph, I mean, you know, it's really abysmal. So we have the tree cover, which is in the green bars alongside, and it had a slight dip, and now it is kind of increasing. But the carbon footprint and the carbon emissions that are happening are on tremendous increase. And if we don't do something about it now, okay, our future generations are really going to have a real hard time. We are already experiencing vagaries of weather. Our rainfall is so erratic. Our temperatures are becoming extreme. And there is something, I mean, we need to really take very concrete steps to arrest the effects of climate change. What we are planning to do is, we have really ambitious plans, and I'm happy to share this with you. So we are going to undertake ecological restoration processes. So what this means is that we will pick up unused barren spaces of land, and we will convert them into spaces that are rich in biodiversity. So what this means is we will create food forests, and we will have processes where we convert these lands into food forests, and we'll be using rewilding techniques. So when we started looking at what kind of land there is to kind of provide a green cover to, we realized there are 3 kinds of lands. One, which is in the private ownership of either the farmer or maybe societies or organizations or even temples and churches. Then there is a village common land, which belongs to all the people in the village. And there is land which belongs to the government, which is forest land, and also maybe revenue land in some cases. So we have 2 strategies for land which is in private ownership and for the village land, where we are going to go food forests. And for forest land, we will be adopting rewilding techniques. I'll explain that in a bit. So this is what food forests will look like. So what we will do is, in these barren lands, okay, which are not used by anybody, we are going to be growing trees at different heights. So we will have trees on the periphery like the neem tree, and then we will have trees like moringa, which are very tall, and you know, the light will be filtering to the moringa. Then at the next lower level, we will have trees like tuvar. The light will filter to that. Then it will fall on trees like citrus and, you know, lemon, and the light will filter to that. And then ultimately it will come down to the flowering shrubs and to herbs And then it will also, so this way the light will keep filtering through, and we will have several layers which will provide food for the owners, okay, of the land. And we'll also have a lot of trees which fix nitrogen uh, in the soil. You must have learned that all the pod-bearing plants fix nitrogen. So we will be having many of them. We will have a lot of flowering shrubs. So it has been proven that if we have plenty of flowers, they attract the bees and the butterflies, and these are our pollinators. And the yield of any piece of land increases by 30% when we have more flowers growing around, more flowers growing in the plot of land. Then there is this magic grass called vetiver. Okay, you can see that in the picture below. It is popularly called khas or vada in Maharashtra. So vetiver has a very unique property. It can grow very well in several conditions. So the soil may be acidic, it may be having high lead content, it may have high aluminum content, but vetiver manages to grow. The soil, I mean, the land may have high grazing pressures, but vetiver grows very fast. Its roots grow extremely deep, maybe 20, 30 feet even. And they have this property where the roots bring out the nutrition from the lower layers to the upper layers and then make it available to the other plants. It can also hold soil very well. So it will prevent erosion. And we've built several check dams, and we plan to grow vetiver along the check dams to prevent erosion of soil. So when we do this, there's a beautiful symbiotic relationship that happens between all these plants. Yeah, so this is what we want to do. And ultimately, it will serve two purposes. One is the owners of the land will, of course, get the benefit of the fruit that is growing on the land. And we will also have, and this entire food forest, okay, is going to act like a sponge. And it will absorb all the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So we think that, so we're going to have, I mean, there will be a lot of carbon dioxide absorption. Vetiver grass also absorbs a lot of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So, so we're going to have a great level of carbon sequestering that is going to happen. This is rewilding. So some of the land that is forest, okay, where we don't necessarily have to grow moringa and citrus, but we will want to grow a lot of forest trees like pine, and which will not maybe have direct economic value, but will have a huge ecological value. Where so this is a photograph of the Aravali Biodiversity Park near Gurgaon, where they have taken a barren plot of land, which is actually a mining area, and it was an abandoned mine. And in 6 years, they were able to cover, into this green spot. And the difference here is that we will be using native indigenous plants, and we will have to give a lot of attention to microhabitats. So what happens is, when we have forest lands and we may not be able to really nurture it for long periods, maybe just the initial part. So it's very important that the plants that we select are very sturdy, and they are able to withstand extremes in temperature. And so when we studied, we realized that, every plant has got its favorite spot where it loves to grow. So you might find that there are some trees which love to grow on the, on the tops of the mountains, and some of them love to grow on the valleys. Some of them love to grow on the ridges. Some of them love to grow closer to the rivers. So we identify the so-called favorite spots of every plant. And so these are actually microhabitats, that we identify in our entire plot of land that we are going to work on, and plant, every species according to its favorite habitat. So when we do this, we realize that they first of all take root very fast, and they will require less water during the initial phases, and they will withstand, much better. And one of the things is we realize that when we plant trees, we actually have to nurture them just for about 3 years. And once we do that, then they're on their own and they're just giving. Another thing is companion plants. So, just as we have friends, so plants also have friends. And there's a lot of information available on who's friend. Okay, so we have to take cognizance of that to have more friendship in the plant community when we undertake these projects. So we've undertaken now a pilot project at Dabosa, which is in Palghar district in Maharashtra. And this is what Dabosa looks today. It's absolutely barren. And this is a picture of what it looks like from Google Earth. And we believe that we will truly convert this and into a great green cover and a great sponge for absorbing all the carbon dioxide. We have even more ambitious plans. Once we are successful at that, we want to make a green corridor all along the Western Ghats, starting from Zawar, going all the way down south along the Western Ghats. And as you know, Western Ghats is actually a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It is one of the 8 biological hotspots in the world and even rivals Amazon. So we are actually tying up with BNHS, which is Bombay Natural History Society, and where they will be our knowledge partners. They will give us all the know-how on the plant selection and when to plant, and how to grow the saplings, and all of that. And they will. So we are partnering with them in this ambitious plan, and of course we will be collaborating. We can't do this on our own. There will be many agencies, private agencies, government agencies with whom we will be working. We will be going through many wildlife preserves and sanctuaries, and this will give passage to many of the wildlife. So today what's happening is in all these wildlife preserves, they're very small areas where the wildlife is located. And what happens is this leads to a lot of inbreeding. And when you have inbreeding, the subsequent generations are little genetically weak. So when we give them this passage to move from one sanctuary to another, we also provide a platform where they can make genetically stronger species. So this is what we are doing for the Earth, and I'm so proud to present this to you. And I do hope that many of you will participate with us in this amazing journey. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. The in-depth work by the foundation is absolutely inspiring, and I believe that our youth have found a direction to help them contribute their best in giving this world a new and bright future. Thank you once again.